Hi, I'm Levy Beranbaum, and we're here today in this beautiful part of the country, Walpole, New Hampshire, eating two incredibly decadent chocolate desserts. One is the Brownie Puddle Tart, and the other is a chocolate cake frosted with chocolate neoclassic buttercream. People are always asking me how to make a buttercream that's really creamy and smooth and doesn't lump and have a cake that's evenly iced. Well, I do have a few tricks up my sleeve, so join us today for baking magic. Nothing strikes fear in people's heart as much as making a classic buttercream. So I've come up with a neoclassic buttercream that means you'll never again have to worry about overheating the sugar syrup and cooking the eggs. Whenever we do a buttercream, we always start by beating the egg yolks. And that takes about a minute until they get really light. You can see that the egg yolks are beautifully thickened. And actually, I like using a handheld beater for this because when I pour the syrup on, it doesn't spread it all around the bowl. Now I'm going to make the syrup. Now the secret to this syrup is corn syrup. Because when I use corn syrup and also sugar, the minute it comes to a full rolling boil, it's the exact right temperature. I'm stirring this until the sugar is dissolved. We can see how it's beginning to bubble around the sides of the pan. Now I can see that it's clear. I don't feel any more granulated sugar, so I just lift out the spatula. I don't allow any to drip back in because dripping sugar sometimes causes it to crystallize. Although that's the wonderful thing about corn syrup, it prevents crystallization to a certain degree. You may think it's boiling, but it isn't. Only the outside is boiling. When the inside, center, looks like the outside now, full of big, thick bubbles, that's when you know that the temperature is correct. It's really magic. You can have a tiny little patch in the center like that now. I would call this fully boiling syrup. I pour it into a greased, heat-proof measuring cup. So, on low speed, start by adding just a little bit, because whenever you add something hot to egg yolks, you want to temper the egg yolks by just gradually adding the hot substance. And then you can add the rest of it pretty quickly. And now I have to continue beating it until it's completely cool and full of thick whisk marks on the surface of the egg yolk. You can see how wonderfully thick and pale yellow it is from all the air that has been whipped into this. I feel like eating it right now before the butter is added. And now I'm starting to add the butter, which has to be softened, but not really too soft. It shouldn't be puddly, because if it is, then the buttercream won't be ready to pipe. We'll have to chill it. So I start, depending on the temperature of the butter, how quickly it mixes in, I add a couple of lumps at a time. And as long as it's not splashing out of the bowl, it's fine to add it on high speed. You can see the consistency of the butter just right. Now you can see how beautifully smooth this buttercream is. In fact, if I stop the beaters and lift it up, you can see these little peaks. And that will tell you that you could use the buttercream right now just the way it is, or you could make chocolate buttercream. The best chocolate to add is your favorite eating chocolate, semi-sweet, bittersweet. Okay, and you don't actually have to have the mixer going when you add it, because it's hard to get it all to come out. So start on low so it doesn't spray all over the room and yourself. It's happened to me. And then bring it up to high, and just keep beating until it becomes completely uniform in color. See how it lightens in color as the dark chocolate mixes into the buttercream? It looks almost coffee color. So I'm now going to have to scrape the bowl with my rubber spatula and fold it in or stir it in You can still see a few streaks of the chocolate, but you can also see how very airy this buttercream is. It's going to be a dream to pipe. This texture of this silken buttercream is going to be so beautiful for frosting the cake. I put a big dollop on because you can always wipe it off. And then this is where the turntable comes in handy. I can hold my spatula practically steady and just turn the turntable and get a very even layer. Or I can use the little spatula. That's really more important for the top, because for the center, I just want to make sure it covers the entire thing. Now you're probably wondering why the sides are so messy. We'll take care of that in a moment. And now here's how to put on the second layer. And then when you've placed it right evenly with where the side of the cake is, the other cake, press it into place. Now I'm going to worry about the sides. Or I'm not going to worry, I'm actually just going to take care of the sides. Same principle as doing the top. We always have a little bit of crumb. Some people use a crumb sealer, such as royal icing or jam. But I just use enough buttercream so that when I'm holding the spatula straight and using the bottom of the cardboard round, that determines the amount of frosting so that you get a very even, straight coat. Those are the tricks of the professional pastry chef. I'm going to make sure that the sides are fairly uniform, no excess by holding the spatula straight. But I'm not concerned with them being totally smooth because I'm going to be doing something special that will be especially delicious and especially beautiful. Now I'm going to put icing on the top, the buttercream frosting on top, to complete the cake. Now you may wonder, why go to all this trouble of making a syrup for a frosting when you can just use the traditional powdered sugar and butter and be done in seconds? But you know how the powdered sugar and butter always have a kind of gritty consistency? That's from the cornstarch that's in the powdered sugar to prevent it from lumping. Also, the powdered sugar, although it's powdered, still has a slightly gritty consistency, whereas you saw how we dissolved the sugar completely with the corn syrup into a smooth syrup. So this is as smooth as silk, and I think once you have a classic or a neoclassic buttercream, you'll never want to go back to having the old-fashioned gritty buttercream. Now you see I've put on quite a bit on the top, so that way as I turn the turntable, it's going out wider and wider and covering the part where it's missing on the side. And then we have to remove that part. And we can remove it by holding the spatula up against the side and going around again. Or I can put it back in my left hand and use the spatula to smooth it the way I did originally.